Then, yeah, with that, we can go ahead and actually get into the webinar itself. We are talking about how we can maximize your macOS management using the NinjaOne platform. This is a conversation that it is very different today than it would have been a year ago. So a year ago, last August, we had not yet launched macOS MDM, the MDM side of our platform for macOS devices. That didn't exist last August. That's actually something that we launched earlier this year in April. So April 2025, we launched macOS MDM. And that is on top of our existing macOS agent. We've actually had the macOS agent for quite some time. It even predates me, believe it or not. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means. When we talk about the NinjaOne agent, when we talk about mobile device management, what is that? And the simple answer is that they are two different pathways. So we have the NinjaOne agent, we actually install that application on a device, and then that device, or that agent, I should say, is going to check back into NinjaOne's servers, and that gives us the ability to directly interface with the operating system. We can directly talk to macOS by having that agent installed on the actual device. The second pathway, and the one that we just added in April of this year, is MDM, Mobile Device Management. And this works a little bit differently. The developer, in this case Apple, but for any MDM, the developer is going to be in charge of APIs, and those APIs control what you actually have the ability to set on the device. And so in this workflow, NinjaOne servers are communicating with Apple servers, and then Apple servers are using that MDM API to go ahead and relay that down to the actual device itself. A little bit more complexity to it than that, but that's kind of the broad strokes. Now, there are trade-offs to both of these that we'll discuss in just a second. But broadly speaking, NinjaOne offers a Apple native silicon agent that is going to give you real-time capabilities. So that's going to be what facilitates remote access to the devices through the agent. What is going to be, it's also going to facilitate the live terminal. So all of the remote tooling that you use for file browsers, for killing tasks, for, again, the live terminal view to interact silently and troubleshoot in the background, that is going to be through the agent. And you're also going to have the EDR deployment for an integrated tool like SentinelOne or CrowdStrike that you can deploy. You can also deploy any DMG or PKG through the agent. There's custom shell script automations that you can create. There's the real-time alerting aspect so that when you are low on disk space or when file vault is disabled, you're going to get that notification in real time. Now, that's all the agent. On the MDM side, uh, as many of you who are in the business of managing Macs day to day are probably familiar with, Apple in recent years is becoming increasingly hardline that certain features and functionality inside macOS should only be managed via MDM. That is their preferred route of management, is using MDM. And so in this case, there are certain things in macOS that an agent is either not able to do or not able to do easily. And the two most important ones that I can think of for macOS would be patching, first and foremost. We do offer agent-based patching, but I'll be upfront with you. Solely agent-based patching takes a lot of time to set up, takes more time to maintain over time. MDM is significantly more streamlined and easier, and that's because Apple wants to make that the easy way. Path of least resistance, they want you to pursue that MDM method of management because that is their preference. This is all being done according to Apple in the name of privacy, but it has very real downstream impacts on the ability of MSPs to provide, enterprise business grade management of these devices. See, a quick question here. Is the Intel Mac supported as well? Yes, absolutely. But obviously, Apple is moving in the direction of Apple Silicon. We support both Intel and Apple. The agent will run on both. It is just that you no longer need Rosetta if you're on an M1 or an M chip Mac. You no longer need to have the agent run in Rosetta. It'll run natively on the Apple OS. So now we can look at this through the pros and cons of each. So agents, it's fast, it's responsive. We interface directly with the OS. It gives NinjaOne a lot of flexibility with what we want to implement. For example, we've been able to implement file and folder backups on macOS. That's another thing that is going to be accomplished through the agent. But it is going to have limits. The agent is having limits placed on it by macOS, where it's not able to interact deeply with certain parts of the operating system. Patching was one thing that we mentioned earlier. Device configurations, restrictions on device functionality, that's another one that you really need an MDM to set. And then the system extensions and the privacy preferences, uh, those all can only be set through MDM. So there's definitely a lot of value here with MDM being able to deliver these device configurations, these custom payloads. It really can help smooth the friction between an end user and from the manager of the device. However, MDM is not really going to be ideal for real-time troubleshooting. The idea behind MDM is you are going to set your device configurations, and those are going to be put in place and enforced either on a specific deadline in the case of something like patching, or as the device is provisioned. And so that's very valuable, very useful. However, in the business of providing managed services, you need that real-time responsiveness. You need the speed. And so it's our contention you need both. Yeah, you need both the agent and you need to have MDM in order to fully support macOS, because that's just the way that Apple is moving in that direction. They prefer that certain key functionality is accomplished through MDM, but I don't think it's really realistic for an MSP to have only MDM. Without that real-time responsiveness, without that real-time alerting, I think that's a huge benefit for MSPs in terms of the value proposition that you're able to bring to your clients. Now, what we want to do is bring you the best of both worlds, and we don't want you to have to think about agent versus MDM. As you'll see when I jump into the platform and we start going through the demo, very little of what we see here is going to say agent or MDM. We want this to be a holistic experience for you. We don't want you thinking about the caveats of macOS management too much. We want to give you a tool that's going to do what it says on the can, what it says on the box, and that you're going to be able to quickly and easily implement and put in place. And you're not going to have to worry about what's MDM or what's agent. We just want that to be seamless. We want that to be completely seamless for you going to the device. So on the agent side, you're getting that real-time alerting, you're getting the live tools for troubleshooting, you're getting the ability to push custom automations, custom applications as DMG and PKG files. You're getting the remote access with NinjaOne Remote. You're able to patch software applications. You're able to back up the device. You're able to deploy the EDR. And then on the MDM side, you're able to get the operating system updates. You're able to deploy the restrictions, the system extensions, the privacy preferences. And that really helps streamline everything. If you do not have an MDM in place to smooth the path for the deployment of CrowdStrike, just as an example, as you deploy CrowdStrike, the end user is being bombarded for all these permissions that the CrowdStrike sensor is going to need. Full disk access, access to your documentation. You need to turn on the sensor. And so without an MDM in place, that is a huge point of friction. As you're deploying everything, it's not fully seamlessly automated from end to end. You're having to then connect to the device and do something manually, potentially. You're having to coordinate too much with the end user. It kind of goes against the philosophy of managed services, in my opinion. And so with this, again, you get the best of both worlds, but we don't want anybody to have to be thinking about, hey, is this an MDM action or an agent action? We want this to be seamless. Now, I do want to clarify something because I think a lot of times when I say MDM, people kind of go, oh, well, this means whatever particular device I want to have an MDM. And so I wanted to be very clear about what NinjaOne actually supports today for mobile device management. You can see them right here. It's Mac OS, it's iOS, it's iPad OS, and it's Android devices. So any device that is running a supported version of those operating systems, you can enroll in NinjaOne MDM. So of course, today we're talking primarily about Mac OS. I know one very common question that comes up a lot is Chromebooks, Chrome OS. That's not something we support today. Please submit a feature request if that's something you need. We've heard a lot about it, but then there's sort of Some caveats there with Google. I think you need to pay an additional management fee for Android devices you want to manage separately through Google. Sometimes that pricing is tied to the device. So basically, we need more info. If you're interested in Chrome OS management or Chromebook management, please submit a feature request and just give us some details about what exactly you might need. And another functionality or another operating system that you're not going to see here is, of course, Windows. We don't offer Windows MDM yet. Slight tease there. But we do offer, of course, the NinjaOne agent, which has very robust functionality across patching, both the operating system and software, remote access. If you're using NinjaOne today, you're probably using it on Windows devices. So I won't go over that in too great detail. And actually, we have a great question right here in the chat that I want to start with. So Jeremy says he's pretty new to Mac OS, totally understandable. For the MDM piece, the Mac has to be in Apple Business Manager. It does not. So you do not need to have Apple Business Manager in order to manage Mac OS. You really don't need it even to manage iOS or iPad OS either. However, it becomes a more manual process. So when you do not have Apple Business Manager in place, that means you're not going to have any automated device enrollment in place. And so the benefit of Apple Business Manager is that you can link it with NinjaOne. And if you have multiple clients who you're going to be integrating, you would all integrate them separately. You don't want to put them all in one giant MSP ABM account. It actually goes against Apple's terms and conditions. So you want to use your client's individual uh, ABM accounts and you can integrate them in the Ninja. And so the workflow is as those devices are purchased, they get automatically enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. So basically, as the device turns on, it is already set up, and then all your configuration flows from that. So it is not required to have ABM, but I think you're going to see a significant benefit long term in terms of the streamlined process of how it gets enrolled in NinjaOne, how the agent gets deployed. I really think that there's a huge benefit for Apple Business Managers. So while it is not required, I'm going to say I think your life's going to be a lot easier if you do get Apple Business Manager. There is no cost associated with it, but you do have to go through a verification process and provide a DUNS number or DUNS number. Not sure how that's meant to be pronounced. In order to get that ABM account. So if you don't have one today, I would recommend as an MSP for testing purposes, it might take some time to get spun up. But again, I want to be clear here that for your clients, you don't want to be enrolling client devices in your own MSP ABM account. You want to be integrating your clients' separate ABM accounts into NinjaOne. And again, huge benefit there. Yeah, I see people saying this in here. Craig saying you need an ABM account per client. So yeah, if you want to spin up your own ABM account for your MSP's devices and use that for testing purposes, absolutely. But all client devices, all client ABM accounts, those are integrated individually into NinjaOne. And Nathan informs me it is pronounced DUNS, so not a DUNS. And I see a question here from Lewis. He is asking about supervised mode. Yes, that is another benefit of Apple Business Manager for iOS and for iPad OS, is that that is the primary way that you're going to get supervised mode on iOS and iPad OS. A little bit different for macOS, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And Joe has another question here. He wants to know when Apple VR gear is likely to be supported. I don't have any info on that one, but I'll take that back to our product manager in charge of Apple MDM, Paul Evans, and I will ask him if he has any insight on that. Yeah, and I'll say here, Craig is again providing some useful ABM context here that I want to share. He says, plan on taking at least 3 weeks to get an ABM account created. And again, this is for your MSP. This is not for your clients. So make sure you have that lead time in your plan. All right, with that, we are now looking at the NinjaOne dashboard. So I first want to go ahead and show you what an MDM enrolled device looks like in NinjaOne. So we're going to go to this macOS device right here. It should look exactly the same as any other device. We want to have this very consistent with Windows devices, with Linux devices. You get a very, very similar experience here. The one detail that is going to key you in on the fact that this is enrolled in both MDM and then also has the agent installed is under the details menu. So right here, if you look at the details menu, you can see that we have the agent-based details. And so this should look very familiar to everybody right here. You can see here we have our CPU utilization. Keep in mind that for our long-term data retention feature, which is going into early access with the 10.0 release, but you can reach out to your account manager to get this turned on today. This is going to give you 90 days of data that you can go back and look at. So right here, let's say, hey, well, I actually just enrolled this VM this morning, so this is not going to go back very far, but you can see on another device that had been online for more than this morning, you would get that complete CPU utilization here. And so you get all this useful information, again, useful for the troubleshooting component of when a user has an issue, contacts you, and the help desk is trying to help sort everything out. But you also get the MDM details here. Now, up at the top, you'll see everything that we're used to, the ability to run an automation. So we could run a custom shell script. If we wanted to push a DMG or a PKG, we could upload that into NinjaOne, and then we could push the application from here. If you needed to transfer a file at scale to many different devices, we have a file transfer automation. So anything less than 200 megabytes, very easy to transfer out at scale to Windows, to Linux, and to macOS devices. We can go ahead and initiate a reboot. We could lock the device. We could force an installation of the NinjaOne agent. If it was not already installed, we could erase the device because this is an MDM. We've got our live terminal right here. So terminal as root, very easy for me to click on that and see, whoops, if I can type, there we go. You can see very fast, very responsive. I keep emphasizing the speed of the platform here, but I think that's a huge selling point when you're working on the help desk. I know this from firsthand experience. Waiting on the tool to catch up to what you're doing is not a fun experience. And then we also have the remote access as well. So NinjaOne Remote. This is going to go ahead and launch. And then right here, I'm directly into the device like so. Let's see if it's going to. There we go. And so you can see here, very easy to get into the device, take care of whatever you need. So we can go in here. If I type in profiles, you'll see that this is where you can actually see the MDM profile that is installed on the device. Now, what you see right here, all these configuration profiles, there's the enrollment profile initially. So this is what I initially installed on the device to get it enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. So this is what we got first, and then everything else has been deployed either automatically or via policy settings. So right here, NinjaOne agent and remote, so that we're able to go ahead and turn on the screen recording permission and that the agent automatically has full disk access. Passcode settings, informing us that we need to maybe be restricted based on a certain passcode settings. If we go down here, system extensions, CrowdStrike up at the very top, custom payload for Google Chrome. Everything that you see here, this is something that would otherwise need to be manually done with a technician working with the end user of the device, or the end user would have to do it on their own if you did not have an MDM in place. So just to give you some insight, basically what I did is install the MDM profile on this device manually. And I sat here and I watched as all this stuff automatically deployed. And in the span of less than 60 seconds, the device was fully enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. It had CrowdStrike deployed. I was able to go ahead and initiate a NinjaOne remote session. Keep in mind, I did still have to go into screen recording and allow NinjaOne remote. NinjaOne will automatically allow the end user to set that action. There's no additional permissions that need to be granted, but Apple has made this something that you can only do through as an end user logged into the desktop. There is no way to automatically enable that for an application that's conducting remote access through MDM. So that's just something I want everybody to be aware of there. That's more of an Apple restriction than it is a NinjaOne restriction when it comes to using an application for remote access. I know that there are other ways of initiating remote access that are not subject to that restriction, but we don't support them yet. So if you're interested in that, please make sure you submit a feature request. So I want to answer a question here about the installation. What does the installation process actually look like? And the answer is that you have two options. So the first one is, let's say you're not using Apple Business Manager. You just want to go ahead and get the device enrolled in MDM as quickly as possible. First and foremost, you need to go into settings, you need to go into apps and into Apple here. And so here you'll see the APNS or the Apple Push Notification Service. And so this is required. You have to do this step in order to communicate with Apple devices, but it does not require an Apple Business Manager account. However, automated device enrollment. This is how you would have the device automatically enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. This does require an Apple Business Manager account. And you can see here that you do have the ability to add as many ADE profiles as you need. You have the ability to add as many content tokens or apps and books tokens as you need. So there's no limitation on that. You don't need to have just one, even though we have just one here. You can integrate as many as you would like. So let's say I want to just do a test. I want to install without having Apple Business Manager. I want to enroll a device in MDM. I'll go to the top right. I'll go to the plus sign there, and then I'll go to device, and then I'm going to add a computer. And I know that's a little contrary here. You can see that we've got mobile device, but that's only iOS, and iPadOS, and Android. You're still going to enroll a macOS device as a computer. And so we'll go ahead and click on that. We'll go down to the Mac option right there. We'll select an organization like Bill's Maple Leaf Diner. And then down here, you see the distribution type. What I did is I selected MDM enrollment profile. Now, when I generate that right there, I get the ability to download the profile, or I can copy the link and download it. Now, when you do that, let's say I download the enrollment profile or I use that link, I go to my macOS device, I install the enrollment profile manually. I'm enrolled in MDM, and NinjaOne will automatically deploy the NinjaOne agent. So this will work regardless of if you have the NinjaOne agent already installed. You can then deploy and add MDM on top of that. Or you can go ahead and have a device that has no management whatsoever, install the MDM profile, and you're going to get MDM as well as the agent. Now, you can separately install just the DMG or install just the PKG, and you get just the agent. So your two options with NinjaOne for management are, I want just the agent, I don't want MDM, or I have another MDM in place, so I need the agent to supplement the other MDM's functionality. So in that case, you can install just the agent. Or you can have MDM plus the agent. Those are your only two options. There is no MDM only option. So you have to have either just the agent or you have MDM plus the agent. So those are going to be your two various options right there. Now, again, when I do this MDM enrollment profile here, it's going to automatically deploy that NinjaOne agent as soon as I enroll it in MDM. Yeah, I see a question here again, kind of going back to the Ninja Remote conversation. This is the question from Joey. He's asking, can you push out the privacy policy for screen recording through NinjaOne MDM? To my knowledge, that has to be done manually by the end user at the device level, or a technician would need to otherwise be present at the device to allow for that. So yeah, that is a restriction for an application that is going to be viewing the screen that has to be whitelisted by an end user. There are other methods of remote access that involve direct MDM pathways that Apple has set up that don't rely on an application, and therefore they're not subject to that, but we don't support that quite yet. So if you do need that, please let us know via feature request, because we're a data-driven company. We don't do anything without having the data behind it. So if we have the data showing that this is useful for you, we will probably build it. But I don't think we have that data quite yet. So that is one method of management. And that's great for testing. It's great for ad hoc situations like I had this morning, where I had to quickly spin up a VM so that I could have something to show you guys today. However, I would say long term, you're probably not going around manually enrolling macOS devices in MDM. You probably want to make that more of a programmatic process. And again, to have that done, you do need to have Apple Business Manager. And so what you would do is you would integrate Apple Business Manager automated device enrollment right here. What this will do is then have devices automatically enroll in MDM as they are spun up. So as they go through the setup assistant, devices are automatically going to appear in NinjaOne MDM because that's going to be the point in time at which they were enrolled. Now, here's another, we talked about the caveats of Apple, kind of the push-pull of different things that they do. Some of you may be familiar that on iOS and iPadOS devices, for company-owned enrollment, supervised enrollment, you have to completely reset the device at this point in time. That is not what you have to do for macOS. macOS is completely different. You do not need to do a full erasure on a macOS device. It doesn't even really have the same concept of supervised versus unsupervised in the way that you do on iPhones and iPads. So when we see automated device enrollment right here, what you can do if you have an existing device and an existing MDM, you can actually go ahead and deploy out the NinjaOne agent first to that device. And the reason I say first is so that you have a pathway for remote access on that device. That's a critical first step, is you need to have remote access to this device that you're migrating. At that point, you can then go ahead and disable, or I shouldn't say disable, you should release it from your old MDM. Let me go back, say it again. You first want to go ahead and make sure that you have a method of remote access, maybe NinjaOne Remote, that is reliable and works on the device. That's step one. Step two is in Apple Business Manager. You want to go ahead and assign to your new MDM server, which would in this case be NinjaOne. At that point, you want to release it from your old MDM. Then you can go ahead and remote into the device and run a terminal command that is going to re-enroll the device in MDM without erasing anything. And at that point, you have the device fully company owned in NinjaOne MDM, and nothing has been erased, and everything is nice and easy. The hardest part is that you do have to have this transitional period where you need to coordinate with your client and arrange for the time to dial in and make sure that you have access during that transition period. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. I know that with iPads and iPhones, right now it is difficult. They do not make it easy to have a transition from one MDM server to another. With macOS, it is significantly easier, and it is a much more streamlined process, I'll say, for now. That is one of those links that I mentioned, the process of migrating and the terminal command you need to run. That is going to be a video in the YouTube description. I just couldn't figure out a way to demonstrate it live, but I do have a recording of it. And so if you come back and watch this later, that will be one of the resources that's included in the email that gets sent out. It is a video on the process of what terminal command you need to run on the device in order to get it to enroll in the new MDM. I see a question from Chris here. A lot of Macs in the environment, but not in an MDM. Can you push MDM through Ninja and not need extra permissions? So yeah, in your case, the process is going to either be manually remoting into those devices and enrolling in MDM, or doing the automated device enrollment method that I just mentioned. So it's not going to be a fully automated process. There is going to have to be a manual touch at some point to get those devices enrolled in MDM. But yes, it is absolutely possible. I do want to talk about what the future looks like, because Apple actually is responding to feedback from the community and making this an easier process. So with iOS, or OS 26 is what I think they're calling it now. They changed up the naming convention. But with OS 26, which is probably coming out sometime next month, I obviously don't work for Apple, but that's generally when they're going to release those. In OS 26, they are adding in additional functionality to make it much, much easier to switch MDMs. So in OS 26, one of the announcements that Apple has made is that you can basically take an iPhone, an iPad, or a macOS device and say you're on a new MDM server now, and it just migrates. And that's it. You don't need to erase everything. You don't need to go through this whole process that we're talking about right now. So our hope here is that Apple is making this significantly easier in the near term, so that mass migrations like this do not have quite the human involvement that we have today. So that is something that I think will be very, very easy in the near future. And Nick says, do you need to remote into the device, or is it possible to use the terminal without bothering the user? So unfortunately, the terminal command that you enter starts a wizard. And so you actually need to be on the desktop to view that wizard and step through the entire process. And again, Apple is this has been kind of Apple's philosophy is they want the user to be in charge of everything. I think as Macs continue to be more present in the enterprise space, they're finding out that there needs to be a better path there. And that's why we see in the new OS 26 that MDM migration is going to be significantly easier than it has been in the past. I'm going to pause real quick and try to make it through some of the questions that we have. So I want to go through here and look at those. I'll say, okay, I'm going to save Joe's question and for when we get to the patching section. Dennis is asking, does this mean we have to pay for 2 points of entry, agent and MDM? I'm going to be honest with you, Dennis. I am not a licensing person. I usually end up misexplaining it whenever I do get asked these questions and try to answer them. So I'm going to unfortunately have to push that one back onto the account manager. I'm not quite sure how they're licensing it. So yes, please reach out to your account manager. They are very prepared on all pricing questions. I apologize that I am not, but I've been burned too many times when I say something that's wrong. Mark says, we use Intune for conditional access, which makes Intune the MDM on Macs. Is there a way to make this coexist with Ninja MDM since macOS can only have one MDM? So you could absolutely have the NinjaOne Mac agent installed and you would get a lot of functionality. So let's go look at a policy real quick. Right here, macOS workstations policy. You can see that on the left-hand side, I've got this MDM section right here. Everything above that is all agent-based. So real-time alerting through the conditions, scheduled automations that can run ad hoc or when called, integrated antivirus right here. So SentinelOne or CrowdStrike, software patching. I think we got about 40 applications that we provide here. Backups right here. We can see a macOS backup of files and folders. We don't support native warranty tracking on Apple devices, but if you have your own source of truth here, you can definitely integrate that into NinjaOne. But we aren't going to do it for Apple natively. We only do it for Dell, Toshiba, Lenovo, HP, and Microsoft. So yes, you absolutely can use NinjaOne, the agent, in conjunction with Intune, but you cannot use NinjaOne MDM in conjunction with Intune. It is like Highlander, there can only be one. Valentino says, how can we migrate existing agent-based clients to MDM? So yes, you would need to enroll in MDM either by remoting into the device and running the profile manually, or by using the automated device enrollment method that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, in a month or two, I'm hoping that process is significantly easier to migrate between MDMs. How does NinjaOne MDM work with M365 conditional access to force usage or compliance on devices? Is something like device compliance sync that other tools use? We're not going to support that today, to my knowledge, Robert. Mark is saying that some Mac devices are not showing the proper name. Mark, I would only recommend reaching out to our support team on that. I know that there's been some discussion about how we pull the name from the FQDN versus, I think, the host name. And I can't remember what it is at this point in time. So I would recommend reaching out to our support team to have a chat. Brandon says, how does this compare to Adigy? Um, I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on Adigy as a product. I think we're pretty comparable. I will say the one feature that I've heard that Adigy has that people would like NinjaOne to bring out is the ability to have remote access without having the screen recording permissions accepted by the end user. I believe that Adigy does have a way because they use an alternate pathway for that. So yeah, please submit a feature request if you would like us to support that. Been hearing a lot of talk about that one. Dave says, does this support account-based enrollment? I'm going to guess that this is maybe about platform SSO. So assuming you have a platform that supports platform SSO, it's a specific protocol that Apple MDM supports. And I believe both Entra and Okta are two that I know support it. I don't believe Google Workspace supports it. But assuming that your IDP is supporting platform SSO, you should be able to accomplish this using a custom payload. You can see custom payloads right here on the MDM side. This should be something that you can set up with NinjaOne MDM. Just not super familiar with the account-based enrollment. I'm just assuming that's going to be the platform SSO. Tyler asked, does MDM cost additional to agent cost? Again, I'm not certain on that. I would highly recommend reaching out to your account manager. This is a great question from Josiah. What functional permissions difference between enrolling with ABM versus not enrolling with ABM? Can users remove the config profile if not linked to ABM? Yes. So that is really the only, or I'll say the biggest caveat of using ABM versus non-ABM. Obviously, there is the streamlined process of ensuring that devices are automatically being enrolled. However, the other one is that when you enroll on a device locally, you are going to have the ability as an end user to remove that profile. So that is going to be the one kind of caveat there. macOS, again, doesn't really do the whole unsupervised versus supervised method that iOS does. But that is one limitation. The end user will be able to remove that profile if you do not do it through Apple Business Manager, if you do it the local way. Now, again, if you've got it in Apple Business Manager and then you run that terminal command and you run through the wizard, that's going to be completely supervised. That is not going to be able to be removed by the end user. So yes, great question from Josiah there. Thank you for reminding me that. Question here from, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, so I won't do it. Will there be a pre-built application for Mac like Winget in NinjaOne? We do offer third-party software patching right here for macOS. It is just a smaller repository because Winget is not going to work on macOS devices. You can see right here, it's about 40 common applications. Doug says, seems like Apple is really making this hard on purpose. I think they've done a lot of things in the name of security. And I think you're maybe starting to see the worm turn a little bit here by making it much easier to switch in between MDMs. I think they're maybe acknowledging reality a little bit more when it comes to what features and functionality you need to provide to have enterprise level management. I see some more cost questions asked here. Sorry, I'm just not able to answer that effectively. Ty has a question. How is multi-tenant handled? So yeah, great question. We absolutely support integrating multiple APNS tokens, multiple ADE tokens, multiple content tokens here. You can see here that for the automated device enrollment, if I go, where is it? Oh, for apps and books right here, you can see that I can actually assign this to organizations. So when I'm using the content token, I can say, well, only certain organizations can use this because only that client is going to use that content token. So you can see here that you can definitely set up the multi-tenancy in a safe way so there's not going to be cross-pollination of your content tokens and those applications in between different clients and different organizations. Same thing for automated device enrollment. When you set up automated device enrollment, you get to go ahead and set the default organization that you're going to register to, as well as the default location. And so this means everybody goes to the right place, everything in its right place when they're automatically enrolled. So absolutely support multi-tenancy, and you've got a lot of ability to put a structure in place so that things aren't going to the wrong area. Yeah, great point by Harvey there. Question from Jared. Will NinjaOne MDM enable an SSO solution for macOS that syncs with Entra or uses SAML authentication? Again, with Entra, they support platform SSO, so I do think you have a path there. I'm not certain about us natively supporting this. If we get enough feature requests, I think we would absolutely build it. But yes, platform SSO is supported with Entra, and so that should give you a lot of capability to deliver custom payloads that enforce, the person who needs to sign into the device in a Windows policy. What am I doing? Right there. You can go ahead and add that custom payload in here for platform SSO. I think we have a documentation article on this in our dojo. I'm not certain if it's made its way through the hopper yet to actually get published, but we do have documentation on this. So let me go ahead and see if I can find that real quick. Uh, Okay, this is all about our SSOing into the platform, not about the Mac OS side of things. Let's see if it's in custom payloads. All right, well, I won't keep you guys hanging out watching me do this all day, but I'll try to make sure that we have a link in the description of the video once this gets posted that talks specifically about platform SSO, because I know it is absolutely possible with macOS, with iOS, with iPadOS. It is a custom payload, though. So Josh has a question. Does that new process include unmanaged devices moving into ABM for the first time? Absolutely. So if you're using the automated device enrollment that we see here, if it's a brand new device, uh, it will absolutely be something that you can enroll in NinjaOne. If it's already been through the initial setup, you are going to have to do that terminal command. And so you will have to go to the device, remote into it. You will have to run that terminal command. And so that will rerun the setup assistant so the device will recognize that it's enrolled in an MDM. And at that point, it would be enrolled in an MDM. For new devices, they're enrolled as they're purchased, basically. And so as the person goes to do their setup, and goes through the setup assistant, it's automatically enrolling an MDM at that point. But if you have an existing device that's not in ABM and then you enroll it in ABM, or it's already in ABM but it's not managed by an MDM, you are going to have to do that manual process where you run the terminal command to force setup assistant to run so that you can then go ahead and get it enrolled in the device. Oh, it's about new OS 26. Let me think about that. No, you're probably going to still have to do the manual process that I just mentioned. You're probably still going to have to run the terminal command locally with the if it's unmanaged and you want to get it enrolled for the first time, I think you are still going to have to do that process manually, Josh. I think the migration is only going to apply to devices that are already managed in an existing MDM, and you want to move over to NinjaOne MDM. I want to talk a little bit about patching. Joe asked a question at the very start of the webinar. He's the very first question, and unfortunately, I've made him wait a little bit long. So I apologize, Joe. I did want to go ahead and talk about patching. So let's go ahead and go into the policy here. We've talked about all our various settings here. We can see the passcode restrictions. We can see the other restrictions on device functionality. So for example, maybe I don't want to allow AirDrop to be used. Maybe handoff shouldn't be used. Don't modify the Bluetooth settings or allow the personalized advertising. Uh, we can go ahead and deploy applications that are from the content tokens we mentioned earlier. I don't think I have that content token assigned to any apps, but you can go ahead and assign those in Apple Business Manager and then push those applications using the content tokens here. You can also set up your proxy settings and add in SSID profiles. And then here we get to the actual patching component. And so what you can do here is you can delay the upgrades up to a max of 90 days. So this is what it would look like kind of out of the box. You wouldn't see anything checked here. And so what we can do is say, hey, delay the major OS updates. Let's go ahead and delay them 90 days, which allows NinjaOne to kind of stay in control of when they're actually going to get pushed. We can delay the minor updates, same thing, delay up to a max of 90 days, delay non-OS software updates up to 90 days. Beta versions, can they install rapid security responses? Can they self-install updates? So you get to configure all those settings right there. But what I think is really cool is if we bounce out of here and we go back to the dashboard, we can go ahead and view the pending patches that we have here. And you're actually going to see your macOS, oh, that's iOS, but you're going to see your macOS patches. I apologize, somebody deleted something on me. So why do you not have the macOS patches here where they should be? They were supposed to be on that device right there, but you would see the macOS patches right alongside all your other patches. So we see Windows here, we see Linux here, just like we see this iOS patch, we would also see the macOS patch. And so at that point, what we can do is go ahead and approve and say, hey, what's the enforcement deadline for this patch? This looks identical to how it looks for macOS. I know I'm showing iOS here. but you just pick the enforcement deadline and then the time that it's going to occur, and that allows you to enforce the patching so the device has to be updated at the date and time that you specify right here. I just love the fact that you can approve all these patches from one central spot. I am just all too keenly aware of the bad old days where it felt like I had to go into 8 different tools to get anything done. So to be able to have this kind of at a glance view here is I appreciate it. Now, the question here for Joe from Joe was, can he do this on a per device level? And again, I know I am not showing the right thing here, but you should be able to go ahead and do this as a per device approval here. Again, I apologize that I got a little perils of doing this in a live demo environment is that sometimes people do things that you don't want them to do. And so unfortunately, don't have a good example here to show you after all that. So I apologize, Joe, but that should be something that you're able to um, approve right here. Matthew has a question here. I'm moving over to the chat now since it doesn't look like the Q&A has any other questions. So Matthew is saying, so we would essentially need a macOS agent policy per client since this is where the MDM policies are embedded. So I wouldn't say that per se. It would depend on the variation in your settings. Uh, Obviously, if you have a policy here where you're approving patches and you want to have the patches installed at a different time, yes, you would need to have a completely different policy for that. Same deal for your conditions or compound conditions. But just like on the Windows side of things, wherever your settings are going to vary, you would want to go ahead and create a different policy. Now, I'll say here, if we look at this, there are specific restrictions, there are specific passcodes here. Keep in mind that the applications, you set those application levels or those zones, you scope them to specific organizations. So technically, you could go ahead and add in an application here, but if there isn't a corresponding content token for that application, it's not going to get pushed. So I don't really think that you need to create different policies for the applications here, but you would need to do it if there are different privacy preferences you wouldn't want to set up, different system extensions you would or wouldn't want to set up per client, different custom payloads here. So just like with any other policy for Windows or for Linux, wherever those policies are going to deviate for whatever reason, you can go ahead and create inherited policies. You can see right here, we have a macOS policy for CrowdStrike that's inheriting from the overall macOS workstations policy here. And then I can go ahead and assign this on a per organization basis. So I can go in here and say, hey, for Murillo Ventures, all of our Macs, they're all going to get the CrowdStrike policy right here. And then maybe for a different organization, they get the SentinelOne policy. I can kind of switch back and forth like that. Ultimately, our goal approaching the end of this year and the beginning of next year is to take the individual menus within policies, the slices of policies, and allow you to apply those more dynamically so that you don't end up with a lot of different policies in the way that you might currently. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. So Raphael has a question. Would you mind reconfirming if it's possible to have Ninja MDM working with conditional access through Intune? I do not believe today it is possible for NinjaOne MDM to work with the conditional access there. I do think it is possible to have, actually, I know it's possible to have your users sign in or have their sign in enforced by deploying a custom payload saying, hey, you have to go ahead and sign in through platform SSO. So yes, kind of two different things there. I don't think there's a tie with the conditional access today. I do think that there is something that would mean that the user has to sign in using their SSO credentials through Entra. Thank you, Josh. All right, any other questions? I have about 8 minutes left. Okay. Well, with that, I did want to go ahead and announce our winner for today. Our winner is Scott Drynan. Congratulations to Scott Drynan. You have won a prize. I have no idea what it is, but somebody will be reaching out to you here over the next several days. So congrats to Scott. Oh, we got another question from Blake. Is there a system level terminal function without being on the front of the machine? So you do have the ability, Blake, to go ahead and bounce that out into a separate tab. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but if we go in and we look at our terminal here, you can go ahead and bounce that out into a separate tab. So that way you can kind of still click around on the dashboard and you don't get kind of blocked. Like right here, I can't click on very much outside of the terminal box. So that does give you a little bit of freedom there. Hopefully that helps you out, Blake. There we go. All right. And on a high note, so if you have any other questions, especially around pricing, please reach out to your account manager. In the meantime, if you have any questions about anything I said today, please reach out to me, jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Happy to answer any questions that you have about today's presentation or really anything else. So thank you very much for attending, and I hope everyone has a very good rest of your day. Take care.